the Saudi kitchen has expanded. There's a lot more variety of choice here, which is wonderful. But I think molokhia is my favourite Egyptian dish. As we mentioned, we had our Education New Zealand up here last week. They engaged with a number of different entities, the Ministry of Education, universities and others, just to work out how we might be able to, I've been really impressed with the Saudi, Green Initiative and the commitment that the kingdom's made in terms of, sustainability and, transforming the country and making it more green.
Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Greg. Thank you for having us today at your home. It's a pleasure meeting you. So, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam and أهلا وسهلا إلى سفارة نيوزيلندا برياض. أنا شرف جدا عشان أنا هكلم معك in هذا.
Thank you so much. So, also I will greet you in Maori language. So, kia ora.
Kia ora.
So, today we are here with you in your home in Riyadh. It means a lot for us. You invited us and we are very happy to having this meeting with you. It means a lot for us. So thank you again for having us.
The honour is mine. Thank you very much for coming into the New Zealand Embassy today. It's a great opportunity to have a chat with you and to talk a little bit about New Zealand.
Yeah, thank you. So for sure, we'll during our conversation, we'll talk about a lot of things about New Zealand culture, about your journey as a diplomat. So let's start with a brief about you, if you allow us.
Sure, indeed. Well, as we mentioned at the start, my name is Greg Lewis. I'm the acting ambassador here for New Zealand to the Kingdom. I'm actually here on my third assignment to Saudi Arabia. I actually started my diplomatic career as a second secretary here in 2006, and I was here until 2006 to 2009. Went back and did some other assignments, and then came back here again in 2013. So my relationship with Saudi Arabia spans almost 20 years, which is really great, and so good opportunity to be here to see the really positive changes that have happened in Saudi Arabia. But my career itself, in addition to Saudi, I've been working in Egypt. I've been the deputy head of mission there, and my last assignment was as ambassador to Egypt. And also I've had relief assignments in Baghdad and in Abu Dhabi. So alhamdulillah, I've had a great opportunity to spend a lot of time in the region.
Yeah, I felt like you like the region. You like Arab wars, and it's not the first country, as you mentioned. You were in Egypt and other countries. So, in one word, how you feel about the Arab region?
Oh, I love the Arab region. I feel very privileged, very, very privileged to represent New Zealand's interests here, very humbled to be able to do the job that I'm doing. I think the opportunity to represent one's country is something which is very special, and I think it's wonderful, and particularly to be able to do it here in the Kingdom as well. So it's something which I take a great deal of pleasure from, and yeah, very, very privileged and very humbled to be here.
Yeah, thank you. You have experience with Egypt before you come here. For sure, we'll discuss this experience. But let's start with New Zealand. It's a culture. It's people. So, what you can tell us about New Zealand?
Sure. Well, New Zealand is a relatively new country. The first people, the indigenous people, the Maori, they arrived there about 1300. Their oral traditions talk about a great migration from a place in the Pacific called Hawaii. And so they travelled to New Zealand and settled the country. Europeans arrived much later. And at the moment, we're having people from all over the world are making New Zealand their home. So it's a very multicultural and very diverse country. Auckland, I think from recollection, is the fourth most ethnically diverse city in the world. And there are over 160 different languages that are spoken in New Zealand. So I like to think of New Zealand as a country which is very welcoming to people from all around the globe. We are geographically distant from the region. Of course, we're a Pacific Islands country, about 3 hours flight from Australia. So, and the first country in the world to see the new day. So, it's a country which is very special, but I think very dynamic and doing a lot of wonderful things.
Yeah. Thank you for this brief about New Zealand, and I will take part of your answer about the language and to which extent New Zealand have diversity and a lot of language. But let's go to the original people, indigenous people, the Maori people. Nowadays, Maori, it's very famous in New Zealand. I think more than 16, you can correct my, as a percentage of New Zealanders can speak Maori. So can you tell us more about the Maori and the Maori people?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, Maori are what we call our tangata whenua, or people of the land. In terms of the language, as you say, there is a growing resurgence of New Zealanders, or Kiwis, as we call ourselves, speaking Māori language. I think is about 15 or 20% of the population are able to hold a conversation in te reo, or in the language, and people are learning it to better understand both the Māori culture and also our cultural identity as people from Aotearoa, New Zealand. It's taught in our schools. I myself did some courses at university. And I think it's very important because I think it distinguishes us as being from, as we'd say, Moana Nui a Kiwa, from the Pacific. It's something which is particularly unique for New Zealand. There are dialects that are spoken throughout the Pacific, but it's something which we treasure and consider. In Māori, we'd call it taonga, a treasure.
Wow. So do you think Maori will across the border of New Zealand one day and be famous in other countries as a culture, as a language?
Absolutely, for sure. I think there's a lot of cultural diplomacy that we do in our work now as well. I think there are some very core values of Māori culture which are really important in diplomacy. Manaakitanga, for example, is a Māori word which means essentially it's looking after. Well, it's wider than this, but it's looking after people and showing hospitality. Kotahitanga, bringing people together, is one. Whanaungatanga is another Māori value, like the creation of a family and like the importance of family and that kind of thing. So there are a lot of things I think which resonate with diplomacy, that resonate with cultural diplomacy, and also resonate with this part of the world as well. So absolutely, I think it's something which we can project very well, and I think it'll be well received.
Yeah, I think if I will learn one more language than Arabic and English, I will put Maori on my wish list, because when I see people talk about it, it's very interesting, it's very different and unique. It's look like it's not only words, it's about passion to talk, to convey your message to other parties. So maybe you will give me
you can come into the embassy, we can have some classes.
Yeah, good idea. So back to New Zealand, Greg, regarding the capital of New Zealand, before it was Auckland and before this was Wellington, back to Wellington again. Is this political decision or strategic decision? It's why you change the capital again?
That's an excellent question. I think Wellington is the what we call the Pākehā name, like the European name for Pōneke for Wellington. Essentially, it's in the middle of the country, so I think it was probably geographically located because it was in the middle for both the North Island and the South Island. As you're aware, New Zealand's made of two primary islands, and then a third to the south, Stewart Island, and then Chatham Islands. But in terms of the landmass and areas where people can gather, I think being central is quite important.
So New Zealand, it's a benchmark for the developed countries, and a lot of developing countries would like to look after the New Zealand achievement and missions. What is the milestones New Zealand did during the last decades make New Zealand in this position?
Over the past few decades, or?
Yes,
or just in general?
In general.
Well, of course, New Zealand was the first country to give women the right to vote. I think that's something which we're very proud of. We're also very proud that the first person to climb Mount Everest was a New Zealander as well. So a few firsts there. But I think one of the things which makes New Zealand sort of stand out, which in my opinion is the way that we have quite a strong social fabric, and people sort of pull together, work very hard for the advancement of the country as well. So I think we have quite active public participation in our political systems, and very robust discussions about things when we need to.
Yeah, New Zealand nowadays, and this since a while, has high rank in quality of life, health, education ranks. What is the recipe? If you can have like a recipe for this success, what is it?
That's an excellent question. Well, first of all, I'd say no country is perfect. So I think New Zealand's working through a number of issues like many other countries at the moment as well. But as I said, I think one of the things which I particularly cherish about New Zealand is the fact that our communities are, quite, I won't say homogenous, but they interact very well together. So we talked about the Māori culture as our Indigenous people. There's been a lot of work in terms of recognising their rights and Indigenous rights over the last few years. We've done a lot of work in terms of promotion of diversity and different ethnic groups as well. I think that certainly contributes to a very strong nation and allows us to achieve a lot because I think together when we bring everybody Mābat all together it creates just a stronger society in general.
Yeah, do you think is a New Zealand achievement similar to what happened in Malaysia? Something like this, because I studied in Malaysia and I thought it's same, the diversity of people, the Chinese, Indian and the Malay people did the same achievement, taking Malaysia from developing country to a developed country. So sometimes diversity, it's a positive thing, not the opposite.
Definitely, I think it's a positive thing. With Malaysia, like the percentages of ethnic groups are quite different from Aotearoa New Zealand. But I think the sentiment's the same. I think the more we sort of understand each other and we work together, then I think that promotes better understanding and better collaboration and cooperation.
Thank you for painting this vivid picture about New Zealand. Let's move to a personal side. Your experience and your journey as a diplomat nowadays in Riyadh to Saudi Arabia and before and Egypt. So let's talk about your experience in Egypt, your engagement with the Egyptian culture and so on. And I know you like Egypt very well. You spent a lot of time there. You have a lot of stories. So
I do have a lot of stories indeed. No, absolutely. So my last assignment when I was there, I was New Zealand ambassador based in Cairo. I was there for 4 years, and that was a great privilege to serve there. I had some social media fame whilst I was there, tweeting about Egyptian mangoes,
wow,
which are particularly good. So my time in Egypt was very special. It was coloured a little bit, just given the fact it was during the COVID period, which was a very tough time for a lot of countries. But a great opportunity to see Egypt and to work on New Zealand's foreign policy with Egypt and also some of the surrounding countries too. In that role, I was also ambassador to Lebanon, to Libya, Algeria, Tunisia, and representative to the Palestinians in Ramallah. So it was an opportunity to get quite a regional overview of politics and of developments, and an opportunity to see some of those countries too and better understand them politically and to work out where New Zealand and those countries could actually work together more closely, where we could find cooperation, be that in terms of political linkages, trade linkages, or our people-to-people exchanges. So there was a great opportunity, and
if you remember something about Egypt besides the mangoes, what you remember, what you miss?
One of the things I loved about Egypt is the Egyptian sense of humour. I think Egyptians are very blessed with having a very, very friendly stereotype and personality. So as a people, and very, very hospitable. So that's something which when I left Egypt, I certainly missed very much. But and it's also too, I think with Cairo, like they call it Dunya, which I think everybody finds their niche there. Everyone finds a place, and of course it's a massive city, Cairo, with about 26 million people now. It's a place where I think everyone finds themselves or finds their place.
Yeah. So you spent some time in Egypt. Do you think Egyptian experience as a diplomat in Egypt add to your experience in Saudi journey, like handling the embassy in Egypt and other countries, Arab countries, at you before coming to influence your experience in Arab region?
Yeah, I think so. I think one thing which people in the West can sometimes do is they can, I guess, stereotype the region as one block. I think one of the things I took away from my time in, one of the many things I took away from my time in Egypt and working with the accreditations that we did there, was that every country has its own flavour and its own distinct, cultural strengths. And of course, being here in Riyadh, our embassy is accredited to not only Saudi Arabia, we've also have Kuwait, Oman, Bahrain, and Yemen. And so I think one of the continual messages which I send to colleagues in Wellington is, we could talk about the Gulf, but at the same time, the countries here are very different. They're similar, but they're also different as well. And it would be foolish to assume that all are homogenous and all are the same.
What do you think about the differences between New Zealand, Egypt, and Saudi? Do you think there is a major differences? I'm talking here about even the culture in general.
Well, I think there are definitely cultural differences because we are, geographically distant. Also very different climates, which also influences culture as well. We're in a desert environment here. New Zealand is full of forests and we get a lot of rain, which I think sort of influences how things are done. With the heat here, for example, I know a lot of Saudis are up late at night and quite nocturnal by New Zealand standards, where people tend to go to bed early and get up early. But in saying that, I think there are a lot of similarities too. One thing which always strikes me with the region is the friendliness. It's the value that people place in family, and which I find very appealing culturally, and it resonates significantly with me as a Kiwi as well. So I certainly feel very much at home here in the kingdom as well as in Egypt, which I guess is testament to why I've come back so many times as a diplomat, because it's such a wonderful place to be.
Yeah, it's a very deep answer, Greg, and it means a lot for us, because this is the message we always trying. We are open countries and you are a part for sure from us.
And there's like we talk about Arab hospitality. I'm always humbled when someone extends hospitality to us in that kind of way, because there is a special, I think, spirit here in the region in terms of how people make you feel. And I think that's always the way they say. It's not what you say or what you do, but it's how you make people feel. And I think Saudi Arabia in particular is one country which makes people feel really, really good and very welcome. And I've seen it in particular coming back for this assignment as well. Vision 2030 and some of the projects that are associated with that. The kingdom is open for business. The kingdom is keen to engage, and that's exciting. That's really something which is quite powerful. And the kingdom has changed so much for the better as well since my last posting. So it's a great time to be here, but those core cultural values of hospitality and being and welcoming foreigners to this land have remained steadfast, and I think that's something to really cherish.
I totally agree with you. The vision of 2030, it's something inspiring not only Saudi people but everyone. That's changes. It can be happen for sure for the better. And maybe you are lucky to be here during this changes, to be a part of the mission cooperation with the government of Saudi for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something which is very exciting. I must say the embassy is a lot busier than it used to be when I was last here, which is exciting to see and great to be part of. It's also wonderful to see a lot of engagement from New Zealand coming to Saudi Arabia as well. Like, I think in my first 3 weeks here, we had our Minister for Trade, the Honourable Todd McClay, come up here. It was his second visit to Saudi Arabia in 6 months. We've had delegations here last week from Education New Zealand. We've got planned agencies visits from other government departments as well. There's a lot, I think, that we can do with Saudi Arabia, and in a win-win sort of in terms of the opportunities that are here. So I think it's an exciting time to be a diplomat and to be working in international relations.
Yeah, I agree with you. And for sure, during our conversation, we'll talk about the potential cooperation between both countries. Back to Egypt and Saudi. So, do you miss any Egyptian food, or what is even the food you like in Saudi?
I'm a big fan of Saudi food. Khabsa is my go-to.
Okay.
It's my favorite. But even in terms of talking about similarities before as well. Like I know the Saudi Arabia, in terms of some of its traditional ways of cooking, cooks something similar to what we call in New Zealand the hangi, the Maori earthen oven. You know, lighting a fire, putting food in, covering it with earth, and then leaving it for a few hours to cook. You know, so that's a very traditional thing for New Zealand, but also way back a traditional thing for Saudi as well. In terms of the food that I miss, I'm spoiled for choice here in Riyadh. The Saudi kitchen has expanded. There's a lot more variety of choice here, which is wonderful. But I think molokhia is my favorite Egyptian dish. And yeah, so.
What about koshari?
Koshari is good as well, absolutely, but probably more for winter than summer. So perhaps in the next few months.
Did you try to cook anything for your family from the Egyptian cuisine or Saudi cuisine? Like, I will surprise you.
Yeah, indeed. Well, I've made a number of different dishes, like the shish tawuk and things like that, which from scratch. So yeah, no, I'm always quite adventurous in the kitchen, and if it doesn't quite turn out right, then I'm sure it'll still be delicious because it's inspired with some great flavors from the region.
Let's stay with the differences and how we can connect nations together. So what about music? What about movies and entertainment? So I think staying in Egypt for a while and here in Saudi, did you like any of movies and like Adil Imam, Omar al-Sharif here, Nasser al-Qasabi? Do you follow any of those actors in Egypt?
With the actors, it was generally the Ramadan film series that I'd follow. And of course, some of them were from Egypt, some of them from Turkey and other places. But yeah, I actually found my time in Egypt was very busy. So I didn't have a lot of time to watch television, but it's certainly, the influence of Egyptian films and movies across the region is significant. As a soft diplomacy tool, I think Egypt has succeeded tremendously in terms of promoting culture and also the dialect as well. I was fortunate enough to study in Cairo and to learn Egyptian Amir, and so I can speak with people, and alhamdulillah, they generally understand me, which is great, and I think that's testament to the soft diplomacy of cinema and television in Egypt. Yeah. And there's been some great Saudi series as well. There's Take was one I've been watching on Netflix about a filmmaker based in Jeddah with he and his friends, and some of the challenges they have with family and different roles and things. So I think there's such great potential here and great stories to tell from the region and particularly from the kingdom as well, which traditionally has probably been a little misunderstood, whereas now I think with Saudi Arabia being so open, there's some new stories, some new narratives, and some old stereotypes that need to be washed away, and people to understand the new kingdom and the leadership that it's taking here.
Thank you for tackling this point, because it's very important. Sometimes I'm watching Hollywood movies and still seeing Arab region as a desert and the camel. Guys, we have cars as well.
and magic carpets and things and genies and
So thank you for this, and I think this is part of any diplomat in Arab region to transfer this. You can see in Saudi how we are very modern and the technology everywhere. And I have experience with I was in COVID here and in other developed country, and I can say and I can argue that Saudi was at top for handling the COVID pandemic using technology.
Absolutely, it was very impressive. Yeah, New Zealand did very well also, but I think the reason we were successful was different because we're an islands country and we're able to essentially quarantine ourselves from the rest of the world and then have very strict quarantine procedures for those who were able to get back home.
Yeah. So still we are talking about arts and culture in Saudi. Any event here impressed you? You would like to visit even as a visitor or engage anything special for you here in Saudi?
Yeah, I've been really impressed with some of the mega projects here, like Diriyah. I went out to Riyadh Boulevard City as well, which didn't exist the last time when I was on posting here. Areas which are really quite breathtaking when you actually visit them and see them close up. The thing which I'm most excited about though is Middle Beast. I actually have my tickets already purchased, and I'm looking forward to December so I can So I can see that, because my Saudi friends have told me it's quite something spectacular and worth experiencing. So it's again, it's one of those stereotypes that we need to break. Just think of an event of this size, where I think was it 500,000 people attended last year.
Yeah,
it's significant, it's massive, and it's unprecedented in the region, and it's right here in Riyadh, which is great.
Yeah. So sometimes people seeing this as a normal event, but they didn't imagine the logistic effort, the security effort, the crowd management effort. It's 500,000. It's like 4 or 5 big stadium, and World Cup or something like this. So
it's the population of my capital.
So I think Saudi very advanced, and I think because they have like a religious event like in Mecca and so on, so they are very expert managing crowd and all of this.
Absolutely, and that's something which they do very well. We're always very grateful to the Saudi government for the hospitality they show towards New Zealand pilgrims that come to do both the Hajj and also Umrah. It's always very much appreciated, given it's such a spiritual event for them, and after travelling so far from New Zealand too.
Yeah, I agree with you. So let's move from entertainment, art and the culture to sport.
Sure.
Sport connect all the people around the world. Like here in Saudi, we are, I don't know if part of my audience will don't like this, but I'm a big fan for Liverpool Premier League because of Mo Salah.
Yeah.
So sport always connects people, regardless language, regardless the culture, religion, everything. Sport is like ambassador for everyone. So do you think rugby, as one of the very famous sport in New Zealand, can be one day promoted here in Saudi?
I actually understand that rugby is actually is growing here. So I think there's the Saudi Arabian Rugby Federation does a lot of work in terms of both rugby promotion and also holding of games. But I was talking with a friend the other day who's involved with rugby promotion, and particularly women's rugby too. It's really taking off with women engaging in the sport from all ages, from young people to older people like ourselves. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's something which there's a lot of potential here. I'm aware football is of course the game of choice, and I probably never will be quite as popular as that, given some of the big names that you've mentioned. But for New Zealand, rugby is our national sport, and something which Kiwis tend to get in behind and to watch religiously and avidly. Yeah.
What is the national rugby team rank?
We normally rank number 1.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly where we're at the moment, but we normally right up there. Yeah. And also in yachting now as well. You may have seen last week New Zealand won the America's Cup. So so that's another area. Water sports are also big in New Zealand. Being an islands country, most New Zealanders live close to the water, close to the oceans, and be it fishing or yachting or sailing, boating, kayaking, all those sorts of things. It's very accessible back home.
Very inspiring.
Yeah, and good fun and good exercise. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I like to watch rugby. I don't understand the rules very well, but I feel like it's a very competitive matches. Maybe sometimes football is boring, but rugby you can be because there is action.
Yeah. I once had a law professor. She said that her understanding of rugby is you pass the ball backwards in order to get it forwards.
Yes, this is about the sport. I would like also to ask about the opposite. Do you have any experience with local sport like camel racing?
I've been to camel racing, and I've also been to horse racing here as well. So it's been great to experience that. Particularly, I know of its importance to Saudis in the kingdom, and its traditional linkages into culture too. So that's been something which I've taken great pleasure from and enjoyed. While not necessarily a sport per se, I've done a lot of hiking in the desert. I've been on camps, taking out a tent and just enjoying the desert environment, and lighting a fire under the beautiful starlit sky. There's nothing quite as special.
So speaking about the sport and the local sport, New Zealand famous with rugby, and Saudi famous with other like horse riding and camel riding. Do you think one day we can see joint competition between the two countries about this exchange. Maybe this will help the culture exchange as well, because we agree that sport connects people.
Sport definitely brings people together, absolutely. In terms of rugby and its growth here, I think that's something which we could certainly, look into in terms of how we can, foster those sorts of connections. Camel racing may be harder in New Zealand simply because we don't really have the environment for camels, but horse riding and racing is something which is very popular back home too. So I think, for many areas in our bilateral relationship, there are huge potentials. It's just a matter of seizing upon them and moving forward.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And by the way, regarding rugby, and we all always notice that before the New Zealand national team doing or performing any match, they having the haka, this performance. So tell us about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So the haka, in terms of the sports events, and particularly very famous with the All Blacks, which are the national rugby team, it's essentially a challenge which is put down in advance of a rugby game. I think it's both, to get the blood pumping for our players, but also to intimidate and to try and scare and frighten the opposition. The haka itself, though, is there are a variety of different hakas. There's the haka, which is like a war dance type thing. There's the haka pōwhiri, which is used as a welcoming. For example, when Māori invite manuhiri or guests onto a marae, onto a meeting area, a traditional meeting area. So there's different types of haka, but the one you're referring to is the kamate haka, and that one, if I can say it in Māori, it goes kamate, kamate, kaora, kaora, kamate, kamate, kaora, kaora, ko tēnei te tangata, puru, puru, nāna i te ki wai whakawhititira, a upane, a upane, a upane, kopane whititira, hu. And this is a very famous haka, and it's the one which the All Blacks have made very famous, and was composed by a very famous Māori called Te Rauparaha, and he was being chased by British soldiers at the time because he had chopped down the Union Jack flag and opposed them in terms of settlement at the time, and he hid in what they call a kumara pit, or a sweet potato pit, and the soldiers were looking for him. They couldn't find him, and then he got up and he did that haka, when it basically means it's life, it's life, it's death, it's death. Here I stand, ki te whititira, the sun is shining, and I'm here and proud and type man. So not an exact translation, but that's the general thrust of it. And so it's a very famous haka. It's immortalised by the All Blacks, and something which and one which most New Zealanders know how to do. And you'll find even after events, say the Olympics or the Commonwealth Games, or if someone does something particularly well, often New Zealanders will just break out and do that haka, with enthusiasm and vigour. Also on YouTube, if people Google the haka, they'll see people doing the haka at weddings. Some very powerful haka from school groups that are doing them at tangis or funerals. The haka is ubiquitous, can be used for a variety of different settings.
Yes, and I think haka became famous after the youngest parliament. I think her name is Hannah Clark. Did the haka in the parliament, and it became viral.
She did. Yeah. It was huge here. Yeah, we got a lot of comments from the public. Really, really powerful haka. And so symbolic and meaningful as the youngest member of New Zealand's parliament. So, yeah, it was great to see that spread so around and to resonate so much with people. Because I know Saudi Arabia has something similar with the sword dance. Different, of course, but. Similar kind of concepts.
Yeah, it's very inspiring, and I think it's you should be very proud that until today you have this tradition, and it's part of your heritage, and you still stick to it.
It's a taonga for our people, absolutely. As I said, it's a treasure. Which
Great. We talk about sport, we talk about culture, arts, and for sure, education. It's a very important part. As you said at the beginning, one of the aspects make New Zealand at this advanced stage is the education and the organization of the whole educational cycle. So regarding Saudi and Arab worlds and the initiative for student exchange, what is the initiative currently between Saudi and New Zealand for the student exchange?
That's a great question. We actually have a delegation from Education New Zealand in the region at the moment. In fact, they were here last week. We held a reception for the alumni who studied in New Zealand just here at this very place last week. So, and that was a good opportunity to bring people who had experienced New Zealand education, had reaped the benefits from it, to engage with them and to talk about, how New Zealand might be able to lift its education engagement with the kingdom. Education is something, I think, which creates connections. The alumni who had studied in New Zealand are very positive about New Zealand. As I said to them, they are our true ambassadors, because they're also bridging the cultural divide of New Zealand and Saudi, and can tell people, tell their friends, tell their family about their experiences, about our values, our way of life, and things like that. And I think so not only did they get the experience of a degree or a master's or a PhD, but they actually received also the cultural advantages in terms of being able to see how a different country operates, a different society runs. So we, as I mentioned, we had our Education New Zealand up here last week. They engaged with a number of different entities, the Ministry of Education, universities and others, just to work out how we might be able to expand our education relationship. And that could be, as you talk about, student exchange and students studying back home, or it might be other areas too, like curriculum development or academic exchange as well, because it's not just the students that can benefit from that. Also, I think academia, there's nothing more enriching than living in a different country and studying in a different country, because it opens your world. It makes the world smaller in some levels, because because you understand and see things, but it's just incredibly culturally enriching. So it's an area which I would like to see a lot more engagement on. Yeah,
completely agree. So what is your advice for people, Saudi student who would like to study in New Zealand regarding adopting with the culture? What is your golden advice for them?
My golden advice is, first of all, New Zealand's not that far. So I know a lot of Saudis will say, it's a long way to travel to New Zealand. I think once you get over the geographical distance, I think you'd find New Zealand to be a very warm and welcoming place. I think New Zealand is a country. We're about 5.5 million people, but the country is very large. In comparison to a lot of other places, like we're larger than the United Kingdom, for example, about the same size as Japan, but with only 5.5 million people. So lots of open spaces. Our forests are beautiful. Our lakes are wonderful to go and explore. Hiking trips, they're great outdoors. I think go with an adventurous spirit and go with an open heart. And I think, you'll see the best of New Zealand.
Yeah. So it will not be only studying. There will be a lot of adventure.
I would recommend that, absolutely. I think get out and see the place, engage with the locals, be open to new cultural experiences, experience the tourism side of the country, but also experience just Kiwis in the way that we engage with life. I think that's one of the beautiful things about being in a different country, and is those cultural experiences. And they don't have to be something formal in the tourism sense. It could just be going to somebody's house for dinner and talking about life and things. It's it just makes you a richer person, I think.
Yeah, I wish one day I will do this.
You'll have to visit.
So a while ago we spoke about the vision of 2030, and one of this vision is Saudi to be a technology hub. Yes. Competing other area like Dubai or Egypt and so on. Technology means a lot for Saudi, and now a lot of headquarters for the international companies came and opened their headquarters in Saudi. What is the relation between New Zealand and Saudi regarding the technology? Do you think some of New Zealand technology companies will come here. Any investment, it will come from New Zealand regarding the technology industry will come to Saudi opening here.
And that's a good question as well. I think it's still green fields for now. Like I think Saudi Arabia is doing some great investment in this space. I was looking at the stats in regards to artificial intelligence, for example, some of the solar power projects that are being worked on at the moment, and just the energy transformation as well in the kingdom. New Zealand is embracing science and technology. Also, we have a fledgling space industry too, and I think there's a lot of possibilities and potential for cooperation between the kingdom and New Zealand, particularly in the private space. A lot of it is, I think, just raising awareness of what's possible, and as we talked about before, breaking down some of the stereotypes that might have existed before about, it's too far away, or it might be too challenging, or I don't understand the business culture. I think going both ways in terms of investment into New Zealand and investment into the kingdom, there's great potential. It's just a matter of getting the information out there and for people to be aware what's possible. And I think if people are adventurous and brave, there's great strides that can be made, particularly in this area. New Zealand's very forward-leaning, very innovative, and I see the same thing with Saudi Arabia too now. It's great.
Yeah, and I think also the diversity in New Zealand will boost the innovation, because a lot of group of people from different races, so this will for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So any special treatment for New Zealand companies to come here? Do you think there will be some facilitation or facility or exception or any advantage for to invite companies from New Zealand to land here in Saudi?
Yeah, so the embassy is very active in terms of encouraging New Zealand businesses into Saudi Arabia. We support those that are wanting to come in to provide them with a better understanding in terms of the business culture, our perceptions in terms of how things are sort of run, and if there's areas where they might be able to find particular niche. Obviously, given New Zealand's size, we can't be everything to all people, but we can provide, targeted, high quality, either services and goods. We're very strong, for example, in export of protein products. You'd have seen our meat products, our dairy products. Manuka honey is a big thing, which is a great product. Provides health benefits and whatnot. That's on the shelves here now as well. So I think it's a matter of us finding those sorts of areas where we do particularly well, and expanding that here too. And I think there's great potential there. We've got a very active trade team at the embassy, and I know they're certainly advocating and working with the Saudi government to look at those sorts of opportunities. Next year we'll have what's called a joint ministerial commission, which is an opportunity to get ministers together and to talk about our trading relationship and to work out areas of particular both strength and development. And so that's inshallah going to be held in Q1 of next year. And we normally do it every 2 years, but it helps the embassy at least to place priorities and trajectory on our work in this space. So we're really looking forward to that, because it will be a chance to assess where we've come from the last 2 years and where we want it to go moving forward as well.
Yeah, inshallah. I think this will be a great for trade and exchange, even the not only the product but the knowledge, experience.
Absolutely. So it's quite broad ranging. It's not just say commodity goods, services. I had the good fortune of being up in Alula last 2 weeks ago, and was able to hear about some of the work New Zealand businesses are doing up there, working with the Royal Commission of Alula, and it's exciting times. There's a lot of potential here, and this is just New Zealand businesses operating in Saudi Arabia. There's also the other side as well in terms of Saudi businesses and investment into New Zealand too, and I know the Saudi Arabian embassy in Wellington is very active in that space as well, which is great.
Yeah. Do you think there is some product in Saudi can be adopted in New Zealand, like traditional handmade, and maybe also the honey, because there is it will be a competition between Manuka honey and but do you think some of the Saudi product can be compete in New Zealand market?
Yeah, one thing I always love coming here is your dates. I know it's probably a little cliche, but they are delicious, and they it's something which I think which would be great to get into New Zealand and to sell. There's a lot of opportunities. I think we just need, I guess, people to be aware of what's available here, and also to have business people who are keen to export to New Zealand as well.
Great. So regarding the technology again, you can. I think see on daily basis how the Saudi very advanced in technology and like app share and the Tawakkalna and so on. What does that mean for you? Did you surprise that Saudi reached this level of technology, high technology?
The kingdom's moved very fast, absolutely, and I think the way that it's moved so quickly is a testament to both the desire for modernisation and the vision of the kingdom. So it has been quite startling. I mentioned before, I was here working as the deputy head of mission 8 years ago, and coming back, I think for the first 3 weeks or 4 weeks, my mouth was open and eyes were wide because so much had changed, so much had modernized, and it's so wonderful, and I'm just so pleased to see our Saudi friends here have embraced this, and it's a wonderful thing, and we're very happy for Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think regarding the technology and how Saudi is advanced, you said it's so fast, and I think attracting as international technology companies to come here in Riyadh and in Saudi, this will boost and make it expedite the endeavors of Saudi to reach a better.
Absolutely, the world is so interconnected now. Like I was talking about, geographical distance. Geographical distance is meaningless now. You can easily engage with countries like New Zealand. We have fast internet. We're able to do business online through electronic transactions. It's not as limited as it used to be. The amount of video calls that we have with New Zealand, and bringing together, business people here, government officials here, we're not handicapped by distance, and I think that's something which I push out as well, that in terms of the possibilities between the two countries, be bold and embrace those modern technologies, because they really do bring people together and make things much easier, much simpler.
So regarding the sustainability, let's move to another topic. You can see now there is a lot of initiative, and this is part of also a 2030 vision, Green Riyadh, for example, and the sport path as a part of this initiative, and so on. So sustainability, and I think New Zealand took already this path before Saudi along the way, and so how we can cooperate together, Saudi and New Zealand, for the sustainability topic. How we can start not from scratch, start from what New Zealand achieved today.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I think this is a great question, because I think climate change and environmental degradation is something which affects all countries, and we all must work together. I've been really impressed with the Saudi Green Initiative and the commitment that the kingdom's made in terms of sustainability and transforming the country and making it more green. I think the kingdom's 705 billion SAR, which is being invested into this space, which is a significant amount of money. Of course, Saudi Arabia would be significantly impacted by climate change. We're already largely a desert country, and the impacts of climate change will be felt here as everywhere. In New Zealand, for example, we seem to get more rain than we used to, but I guess that's warming oceans, more precipitation in the air, and then it coming down as rain. But it impacts us all. Food production, food security, we have to work together in this space. And I was really heartened. I read a report, Saudi Arabia is committed to be carbon neutral by, I think it's 2060, which is only 10 years after New Zealand. So, there's great potential for cooperation and technology sharing, and how we can, improve our economies to be more green and to be more environmentally friendly.
Agree with you. I think cooperation between both countries is a sustainability topic. It's not only for their benefits, it's for the world benefits. I think everyone,
and our children,
every country.
and our children, and our grandchildren, and our great grandchildren. The last thing we want to do is provide them with a legacy of a damaged planet. We want future generations to be able to enjoy going and seeing a polar bear, and we don't want to see the levels of extinction which we are potentially seeing at the moment, or as I mentioned, the environmental degradation. We're lucky we're living on a treasured jewel, and we need to protect it. And I think governments are increasingly aware of that, and particularly aware of the consequences. And I saw there's a United Nations report out just this last week warning about the climate and what it might mean for just even global stability and people being able to live happy and healthy lives. It's really significant. So I think initiatives like what the Kingdom's doing are really important. And I know it's challenging. I know New Zealand's is working towards our climate goals, but some would say not potentially fast enough, but it's tough. And I think even small things that we do all add up. So yeah, it's great to be in the Kingdom where there's such a forward-leaning project for that, particularly when it's the economy has traditionally been based on petrochemicals as well, which has contributed to climate change as well. So yeah, it's an important area.
Yeah, I think sustainability, it's not luxury anymore.
No.
They need a lot of cooperation. And this will lead me to my next question about the volunteer programs the New Zealand government initiated for this, and how the New Zealander, and the new generation cooperate in this part, and how we can convey this to Saudi and the Arab region.
Yeah, I think the voluntary sector in New Zealand is quite strong, which is good, particularly amongst youth. I've been out on tree planting projects, and generally it's younger people that go out and really believe in this sort of thing. When we had, I remember just about a decade ago when we had some big earthquakes in Christchurch, we saw a student army go out and help neighbourhoods, and there'd been a lot of liquefaction of the ground, and they helped out with that. So I think there is a strong social ethic for particularly the youth. Saudi Arabia, of course, is very youthful as well. I think the latest stats were about 70% of the population are under 30.
Yeah.
And I think people are aware of the importance of the voluntary sector, to community health, and just to be able to to look after each other. It's really important. Right. And of course, a lot of that in the Kingdom is also inspired by the religion, by the faith, and so it's wonderful to see.
The New Zealand embassy have any initiative here in Saudi regarding the sustainability, any cooperation with the government, or at least you have any think in your mind you will do it soon?
Yeah, so there's the COP conference coming up. This will be an area which we'll be looking at New Zealand representation in terms of what we might be able to do. In terms of the embassy, it's the sustainability and environmental issues are generally from our other ministries, but yeah, certainly we attend events where they can't, and of course, particularly given the distance that needs to travel, sometimes it's quite handy having someone from the embassy go along to a meeting or a conference to represent, as opposed to someone flying such a long distance putting carbon in the atmosphere. So.
And I think over the time, I think you started your mission here in August.
That's correct.
So I think you still have time for more initiative, and
inshallah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you will invite us to cover it.
Of course.
It will be our pleasure. So because we are near for close this inspiring conversation with you, I would like to dedicate this part for the future and the advice. So what is your advice for new generation? They like to go to the diplomatic career path and so on. Do you advise them? Tell me the truth.
No, absolutely. I think being a diplomat is as I mentioned earlier in the interview, it's a privilege and an honour to represent one's country abroad. We often say that we are the eyes, ears, and mouth of New Zealand. We hear messages from our host government. We convey messages from New Zealand, and we explain things as well because we live here and understand them, so that we can then ensure that New Zealand better understands understands why, say, for example, Saudi Arabia takes a particular direction on things. The beauty, and one of the things I really find enriching with diplomacy is the ability to travel and live in different cultures. You take away the best of foreign cultures and you make it part of yourself. If you're lucky, you make lifelong friends as well from your postings, which is really truly quite magical, and it just makes your world so much larger. I definitely would recommend diplomacy as a career. It can be challenging sometimes, but certainly the benefits outweigh any of the hardships. And I think people who do engage with diplomacy, they are aware of how lucky they are. Yeah.
And if you have the time machine and you will get back a little, not for the future, for getting back, you will choose to be a diplomat, or you will choose another?
Well, I started as a lawyer back before I joined the Foreign Service, and I remember I was working on a legal opinion at the time with the New Zealand Ministry of Health, and I received a text message from my grandmother, and she said to me in this text message, "Hello, love. I'm currently sitting on the back of an elephant on the border of Thailand and Myanmar." I remember thinking, I'd like to be sitting on the back of an elephant, as well. And it lit a spark in me. And fortunately, I have been on the back of an elephant subsequently, but I've done so many much more varied and amazing things. I've met some, truly inspiring people in this role, and I've been able to represent my country in a way which, as I said, I feel very privileged to be able to do. So, if I had a time machine, would I change anything? No. I particularly like the region. I love Saudi Arabia, and as I said, I'm very pleased to be here.
Greg, it was a pleasure to interview. شرف لينا. Maybe we'll switch to Arabic.
طيب ما فيش مشكلة.
اتشرفت بيك Greg. It was a very nice conversation. كانت conversation friendly. ما فيش فيها أي رسميات. Thank you again for having us at your home, and I like your home, by the way. So thank you again, and I believe our audience will like this episode very well.
Inshallah. Yeah, well, I would encourage them to visit New Zealand as well. As I said, one of the great things is for Saudi nationals and Gulf nationals, actually, we're visa free, so it's very easy to get there.
Tomorrow you will have a long queue outside of the embassy.
Well, visa free, so we won't have the queue, so they can get on a plane. There is the an arrival document that you need to fill in online, but yeah, in terms of the visa process, we're very easy to get to. So
I think it's a great initiative to exchange the culture and for them just to take the visa on arrival.
Absolutely, and the other way as well. I've been really shocked and pleasantly surprised at how easy it is for New Zealanders to travel to the Kingdom now as well with online visa processing. So it's great. It's wonderful. I think the future is bright, and there's an opportunity for partnerships. As I said, we don't let distance get in the way anymore.
Thank you, Greg, for this inspiring conversation. I didn't feel nervous as I expected. It was very friendly. So thank you again for this opportunity, and thank you for New Zealand Embassy for this warm welcome. Everything goes great. So thank you again.
Truly my pleasure.
Welcome. Thank you.